Hello everyone, Video James here, and welcome to 2019 in review. We had an excellent year of footballing in 2019, though we didn't have some of our usual competitions. It has just been an excellent year overall. Now that it's 2020, Happy New Year. I hope everyone had a happy holidays. But football was huge in the year of 2019, and without further ado, let's kick off. In January, Qatar won their maiden Asian Cup, becoming the best moving team of 2019, moving up from rank 93 to 55 by the end of the year. Morale skyrocketed after 23-year-old Almoez Ali broke the record for most goals scored at the Asian Cup with 9, with partner Akram Afif breaking the record for most assists at 10, and Saad Al-Shaib matching the record for most clean sheets as a goalkeeper at 6 consecutive games. Notable is that the controversial World Cup hosts would have a PR campaign to dispel doubts about the country's ethics, as well as clarify issues with reporting through Gary Neville's Visit to Qatar documentary. Furthermore, Manchester City won the Premier League for their 4th title and 6th English title overall, beating out what many considered the favourites to win, Liverpool, come the final match day, on points. Though Liverpool and Manchester City did not face each other, they ended up playing different teams. It was a dead heat for first place. Liverpool, in spite of their inability to win the Premier League title, still managed to win the 2018 and 2019 UEFA Champions League after a sensational semi-final where an opening leg saw Liverpool lose 3-0 but bring it back to a miraculous 4-0 victory in the second leg. They faced Tottenham Hotspur in the final for an emphatic victory of 2-0. They would later in December beat both Monterrey and Flamengo to win their first ever Club World Cup in Khalifa International Stadium in Qatar. Cristiano Ronaldo, who usually appeared for Real Madrid at the Club World Cup before moving to Juventus for 2019, netted his 99th international goal for Portugal against Luxembourg during the final match of UEFA Euro Cup qualifying, meaning that Ronaldo will likely net his 100th goal come the Euro Cup, being only the second person to ever do so internationally, the first person being Ali Daei of Iran in 2004. Speaking of Iran has lost its position as a top Asian team to Japan after a slew of losses. Losing to Japan in the semifinals of the Asian Cup, they continue to struggle during World Cup qualifying, calling into question their ability to thrive without Carlos Queiroz, their original coach, who had left following the Asian Cup. After suffering defeats to Iraq 2-1 and a rising Bahrain 1-0, they have a long ways to go if they wish to return to the World Cup in 2022. Carlos Queiroz likewise would move to Colombia, showing the prowess and talent of the Colombian national side in the group stages of the Copa America 2019. However, they would lose to last edition's champions Chile in what would be a scoreless penalty shootout in the quarterfinals. If Queiroz can work his magic for this year's Copa America, hosted by both Colombia and Argentina, is yet to be seen. Argentina would face a mass of questions regarding their international performances. After barely making it out of the group stages of the Copa America and being lucky enough to make it out of the group stages in the World Cup back in 2018, the Argentinian squad captained by Lionel Messi is struggling. As footballing legend Diego Maradona would put it during an interview after Argentina struggled with Paraguay in the Copa, Tonga could beat us. In the Women's World Cup, the United States won their 4th ever title. The Netherlands make it to their first ever final for silver. And the widest score margin in World Cup history for both men and women occur in a U.S. 13-0 win over Thailand. In the Confederation of African Football, Cameroon would lose the rights to host the African Cup of Nations for 2019 due to the inability to complete the footballing infrastructure in time. Thus, Egypt had taken the rights to host last minute, moving Cameroon to host the 2021 edition and pushing all the decided hosts back. AFCON was expanded to 24 teams like the Asian Cup, thus giving rise to more African footballers and giving us an eye on football around Africa. A breakout star in the competition was the Cinderella story of debutantes Madagascar. The Malagasy team had come from the preliminary rounds of qualifying, which consists of the worst teams in Africa in terms of rank, to end up coming second in their group, to winning their group after beating Nigeria in a shocking 2-0 victory. Later, during the round of 16, Madagascar would beat the Democratic Republic of the Congo to reach the quarterfinals in a penalty shootout, finishing 6th overall after losing to Tunisia. This would be the best undefeated streak of a debutant at the African Cup of Nations since Libya at AFCON 1982, who had not lost any of their 5 games, drawing to a penalty shootout in the final and getting the runners-up title. Though the AFCON Cinderella story was exciting, the victory of Algeria in the final was the most exciting story in Africa. After failing to qualify for the World Cup in 2018, many were writing off the Phoenix as a round of 16 knockout. Shockingly, Algeria had played in a league of their own, besting all of their opponents by wide margins before reaching the finals. Finally, Algeria would beat the top-ranked team in Africa in the final 1-0, preventing a maiden title for Senegal, but raising hopes for 2021. Like the Qataris that had kicked off 2019 with a victory in the UAE, where they were unwelcome, the Algerian national team had won in Egypt and were celebrated in Algiers as heroes. Speaking of Egypt, who had faced a shocking defeat in the round of 16 on home soil during AFCON 2019, their woes are seemingly mounting despite a team that has been increasing in quality over these past years. Mohamed Salah, arguably the greatest footballer to come out of Egypt ever, has been reluctant to join his countrymen in competition due to political concerns, as well as political manipulation. Though the many pieces that make up Egypt's national team are great, they are still struggling to come together to show what they are truly capable of. Though for African news, some highlights of this year come from the Under-20 World Cup, where Mali had reached the quarterfinals to face Italy. Though the young offensive strikers would lose their quarterfinal match in Poland, they were praised by many after defeating the 6-time Under-20 world champion Argentina in a 2-2 draw, which ended in a 5-4 penalty shootout. The tournament would eventually be won by Ukraine in their maiden title at the competition. Ukraine, despite being considered an underdog at most competitions internationally, has been on peak form in 2019. Aside from their Under-20 victory, they would notably win their Nations League group to advance into the top European league, League A, as well as top their qualifying group for the 2020 Euro Cup after beating the likes of Portugal in their second leg after a scoreless draw in the first. Some are considering them to be favorites for Euro 2020 and to be one of the likely contenders to take the title away from Southern Europe after 20 years of champions in Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. Speaking of Greece, the woes for Piratikos continue. After failing to qualify for the World Cup in 2018, it was a tragedy for many to see Greece fail to qualify for the 2020 Euro Cup, not even ranking highly enough to enter a playoff spot. They would lose to the likes of Armenia and Finland at home and would eventually draw to Liechtenstein, one of the lowest-ranked teams in the world, before having some sort of consolation of reaching third, as Finland entered its maiden Euro Cup. Finland will not be the only nation entering its first Euro Cup, in thanks to the Nations League, which saw a format change after protests from the German FA. The playoffs for the final 4 spots will begin in March. Though 11 of the 16 playoff teams have already appeared in a Euro Cup beforehand, Path C playoff team Israel has never appeared at a Euro Cup and are a dark horse for qualification after an early lead in goal scoring from Aaron Zahavi, scoring 7 goals before the second international break. But there will be another definite debutant aside from Finland, from the League D playoff path, which features Kosovo, who reached third in their group after beating the Czech Republic and battling it out with England, Montenegro, and Bulgaria in their first ever Euro qualifying run. North Macedonia, which had reached third as well in a difficult group featuring Slovenia, Israel, Austria, and a strong Polish side with Lewandowski. Belarus, which had struggled to show their prowess offensively against the likes of Germany, the Netherlands, and Northern Ireland, but shown defensively and had proven their worth against Estonia. And finally, Georgia, which, if successful in their playoff spot, would be the first nation from the Caucasus to ever qualify for a major international competition, and had likewise proven to be defensively strong after drawing with both Denmark and Ireland. Speaking of Denmark and Ireland, the two have entered a sort of rivalry since the 2018 World Cup qualifiers, being drawn into the same group multiple times in 2019. Neither team is willing to show any breaks in competitions, ending both qualifying matches in 1-1 draws. But let's get back to clubs. Al Hilal won their third AFC Champions League title, tying with the Pohang Steelers for most successful clubs. However, the amount of finals appearances makes Al Hilal the most successful overall. For the first time ever, Al Hilal would meet both Monterrey, who had won the CONCACAF CL Champions League, and Flamengo, who would defeat River Plate to win the Copa Libertadores in dramatic fashion, trailing 1-0 after an early 14-minute goal until the 89th minute, where Gabriel Barbosa would score and follow it up with a second 2 minutes after stoppage time. For the first time ever, a New Caledonian club would win the OFC Champions League. Though it would not be a large enough competition to put the world's eye on, it was still an impressive victory for Heineken Sport, who had beaten fellow New Caledonian club Magenta, who had beaten the favourites, Auckland City. Though OFC football is an afterthought for many, this was an impressive footnote for a confederation that has been dominated by New Zealand since the exit of Australia to join the AFC. Now let's get back to the AFC. A small island nation would find gold for the first time since 2011 twice in 2019, both firsts for these competitions. Bahrain would beat Iraq in the WAFF, the West Asian Football Federation Championship, this year in a 0-0 victory on Iraqi soil, but more prominently would enter the competition of the fiercest Arab rivalries in football, the Gulf Cup. Though Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE had originally planned to not attend due to their diplomatic blockade on the host Qatar less than a month before the competition, all three teams had moved to join the tournament. Though the UAE would crash out in the group stages, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain's decision would take them to the final match. After Bahrain had beaten Iraq 2-1 in Qatar and would beat Saudi Arabia 1-0 for their first Gulf Cup gold. Though this would be a minor tournament that would see Bahrain only gain one rank in the FIFA rankings, from 100th to 99th. This would be a reason to keep an eye on the Bahraini national team, as flickers of 2006 and 2010 are showing in their World Cup qualifying group, as they draw Iran and Iraq. Another Cinderella story is the insofar undefeated streak of Syria in the World Cup qualifiers. Though they would crash out in the group stage in the Asian Cup, they have remained undefeated against China, Guam, the Philippines, and the Maldives. Not bad for a nation under so much controversy. But most controversial was a December announcement. Russia is banned from the 2022 World Cup. The WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, has banned Russian athletics from all major competitions after a major doping scandal, which has not been uncommon for Russia. Since the 21-day appeal period has passed, one thing has been made clear. There will be no Russian flag at the 2022 World Cup. Though the Russian national team will still play in qualifying, if they do end up at the World Cup, they would be representing athletes from Russia rather than Russia itself. This also puts a hamper on the Olympics, which sees the Russian athletics as a major contender, now relegated to an Olympic flag. Speaking of the Olympics this year, we have yet to find out just who is qualified for the football tournament overall. Certain confederations are clearly outlined, like the OFC with New Zealand, UEFA, which have Romania, Spain, France, and Germany, and the CAF, which feature Egypt, who won their maiden under-23 AFCON title to qualify, as well as Côte d'Ivoire and South Africa. It will be exciting to see the quality coming from the AFC, CONCACAF, and CONMEBOL this year in qualifying for this year's Olympics this summer. Oh, speaking of CONCACAF, we have yet to mention the Gold Cup. We saw Curacao, in their second ever Gold Cup, reach the quarterfinals after a last-gasp draw against Jamaica, who would join the semifinals against the USA. The USA would eventually go on to lose to Mexico in the final. Shockingly, Haiti had stolen the show against a leading 2-0 Canada in the competition, winning 3-2 to face Mexico in the semifinals, marking the first time where more than one Caribbean team has reached the semifinals at the Gold Cup. Though they would crash out 1-0 in the end, it was high marks for Haiti. 2019 also saw the kickoff of the CONCACAF Nations League, where the Bahamas had advanced out of League C undefeated, marking an end at the absolute foot of the FIFA rankings. Whereas Guyana advanced to the Gold Cup for the first time in 2019, Suriname followed it up by holding the top score in the Nations League, with 10 of their 16 goals coming from Cleofilo Vaitar, whilst winning first place in their group. The other two Guyanas would finish second in their league groups, offering them a chance to qualify for the Gold Cup, marking a rise in football for what have been considered the footballing misfits of South America. Speaking of misfits in South America, Venezuela, which has been ravaged by poverty since the collapse of oil, has seen a rise in football as well. A nation whose national sport is baseball shook all of South America by drawing the eventual Copa America winners, Brazil, on Brazilian soil, This team still has a ways to go before being taken seriously at the footballing table, but it has proven itself to be capable of standing up to one of the strongest teams in the world. Many are putting their hopes on Venezuela to be the last and final nation to make their debut at a World Cup, marking the first ever continent in which all of the Federation's nations have qualified. On the world stage, nations that have grown leagues have been Madagascar, Qatar, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Syria, Finland, Algeria, Curacao, Haiti, Mali, New Caledonia, and even the United States. Mongolia as well, entering their first ever second round World Cup qualifying after defeating Brunei at home and then cutting it close enough in an away match against Brunei in Brunei itself, and then winning their first ever second round match by opening against Myanmar 1-0. Though the growth of these nations came at the expense of others, such as New Zealand, Greece, Germany, Canada, it just proved that the new and revolutionary evolution of football has finally come, where even nations like Somalia, who, despite not advancing to the second round of African World Cup qualifying, managed to defeat Zimbabwe 1-0 at home in Djibouti City in Djibouti, despite a loss to the eventual second round winners, or first round winners. Somalia has shown quite growth and a lot of prowess. Though this was not the year of the Euro Cup, the Men's World Cup, or the Olympics, 2019 was a golden year for football internationally. It was also an amazing year for clubs, in spite of some of our expectations being met, with the likes of Bayern Munich winning the Bundesliga or Barcelona winning La Liga. We still saw some amazing developments, where Liverpool had achieved so many new heights in Europe and in the world, where more clubs are popping up in Africa, like in South Sudan, to develop a safer community, where Ajax had reached the semi-finals of the Champions League, in spite of all their best players being offered better positions because they loved the community that Ajax fostered. My own home state got their own team even. Go Hartford Athletic. We have seen football rise in an unprecedented fashion across the globe this year. Some controversies came, but at the end of the day, the beautiful game gave us a beautiful year. Thank you so much for watching my year in review. This has been Video James. I'll see you in the next video, and please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment the video, and tell me what you think. And is there anything from this year that was a highlight for you? Nothing's too small. You could tell me that your club in Montenegro won the top tier of Montenegrin football, and it's still an impressive feat. And I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice rest of your year. Happy 2020.